for Research in Values and Philosophy, and for the partner organization at Catholic University, the McClean Center for the Study of Culture and Values. We have been trying to foster and cultivate as best we can these kinds of international discussions, intercultural discussions, and hopefully today we can make progress in reframing some of the work we do that, that I described yesterday as contributing to decolonizing discourses about culture and values around the world. So we're looking to our participants today to help with that aspect of our work. I want to thank Robson and Eve for the energy that they brought to this project and to helping us expand our discussions in better into the Latin American space. We're delighted to have people from Europe and Africa as well on this call, in North America. And we look forward to a fruitful discussion today. I want to thank, in addition to the organizers, Hu Yeping, who I would describe as the custodian of the vision of RVP. And with that, I'll turn things over without further ado to Eve and Robson to kick things off. Thank you all, and thank you also to our audience on YouTube joining us today.
Thank you, Professor William Barbieri. First, I would like to thank the Council of Research in Values and Philosophy once again for promoting this seminar, especially in the person of Professor Barbieri and Dr. Hu Yeping. I want to emphasize the importance of this seminar and the efforts of RVP seminar to promote the diversity, dialogue, and the intercultural debate. For Latin America, events like this are of fundamental importance for us to occupy our academic places and to promote our important and prestigious intellectuals. So yesterday we had an excellent day of debates and discussion led by my colleague, Professor Yves Solis, whom I thank for the partnership in the seminar. The topic of violence in Latin America was the main topic discussed, with an interesting debate of the role of religion in promoting violence and peace in our continent, Latin America. And the seminar of yesterday, as well as of today, is being live cast on YouTube and can be watched at any time on Brazilian channel História Online RV, if you want to watch after this debate, or anyone want to watch again this debate. This recording will be in YouTube. So welcome everybody for our seminar today. Today, the central topic of our debate will be democracy and nation building for Latin America and Caribbean, between despair and hope. For our discussion, we'll have three presentations. Professor João Paulo de Paula Silveira from State University of Goiás, Brazil. Professor Thomas Fischer from Katholische Universität Este, Ingolstadt in Germany. And Professor Elizabeth Judd from Universidade Católica Lumen Gentium from Mexico. The main comments and debates will be held by Professor Maximiliano Gaston Llanes from the Pontifical Foundation of Gravissimum Educations in Vatican City. So without further ado, I want to invite Professor João Paulo Silveira to make his presentation, whose title is Religion, Ecology, and Utopia in Brazil. Professor João Paulo de Paula Silveira is PhD in Sociology of Social Practice and Representations from the Federal University of Goiás. He holds a degree in history from Federal University of Goiás and master's degree in history from the Federal University of Goiás too. He has experiences in sociology of religions with an emphasis on new religions movements and contemporary spiritualities, He has experience in the field of history with an emphasis in history of religion, on history of religion. Between August 2014 and June 2015, he was a visiting scholar in the Department of Sociology and Legal Studies of the at the University of Waterloo in Canada. He is currently a professor of degree in history at the State University of Goiás, campus Iporá, and professor of postgraduate program in history at the State University of Goiás, campus Morrinhos. So thank you in forward, Professor João Paulo, and feel free to begin. It's a pleasure to receive you here with us.
Good morning, everybody. Um, well, first, thank you for having me here today. I'm a little bit anxious, but let's go. The title of my presentation is Religion, Ecology, and Utopia in Brazil. I will read a text, I feel more confidence reading it. Environmental issues are the most important challenges that we are dealing with. Global warming, the extinction of innumerable species, desertification, water crisis, air pollution, floods, and the annihilation of traditional ways of life historically connect with rivers, forests, and sea are threats that impact our daily life and reverberate from politics to art expression everywhere. These threats make us question our political ideas, habits, and even our identity. They also confront us as inhabitants of the same home, planet Earth, and remind us that the future of nations, people, and our family are related to an eco-sustainable world community. Bearing this challenge in mind, I discuss here some religious response to environmental issues in contemporary Brazil. Since there was not a turn toward more conservative politics in Brazilian government, more studies have investigated how public opinion reacted to deforestation, air pollution, water crisis, and so on. As we'll try to demonstrate, some of these reactions are informed by religious values and worldviews. The future of Brazilian ecosystem became a conundrum to old and new religious groups in Brazil. In the largest Latin America country, those responses are diverse, but they aim at the transformation of society's awareness on the relationship between humanity and nature. A spiritual change has been emphasized by different groups, individuals, or institutions, from liberation theology to new religions such as Feichonoye and Spiritism. Despite their difference, they plea for the change from an anthropocentric worldview to a more ecocentric, community-based, and sustainable society. This is what I'm calling a religious green utopia, the spiritualization of our relationship with nature as the source for a new ecological horizon. From now on, I will try to discuss two examples of how religious values became an interesting source of environmentalism in Brazil. Well, the first example is what I'm calling green Catholicism. For decades, the progressive wing of Brazilian Catholic Church has dealt with social dilemmas. The preferential option for the poor was the motto of some groups and spiritual leaders, such as Bishop Paulo Evaristo Arns, the former priest Leonardo Boffi, and Sister Ivone Guevara. They aimed to reach those whose human rights were not satisfactorily protected by the social welfare state. Today, to Brazilian Catholicism, or at least to part of it, the concept of poor was uh, as vulnerable may include Amazon rainforest, river, Cerrado savanna, and those who live in these places, such as traditional people, fisher, small farmers, Quilombola people, and so on. The encyclical letter Laudato Si of the Pope Francis and publications of the Synod for Amazon witness how Catholicism are aware of the environmental risks and their social implications. Through them, we can notice how Christian ethic and values can be a source to a different approach on nature. It is also important to realize that environmental pastorals, pastorais ambientais in Portuguese, in dioceses, are responsible to promote daily environmentalism in Brazilian parishes. It is very important to regard that environmental Catholicism are deep rooted in social ground. It is not an idealistic approach disconnected from the social dilemmas. It is grounded in the social demand for land reform and for the preservation of traditional people territories against the damage done by mining, deforestation, and agribusiness. In brief, the Green Catholicism ethic emphasizes an integral approach on nature and social issues. It aims is the transformation of our conscience on both nature and society. Here, the second example, Seicho Noye, English, House of Growth. Seicho Noye is a Japanese new religion established in Brazil since 1930s. Today, most of its members are Brazilian without Japanese ancestry. It is popular in Brazil due to its optimistic statement and its colorful religious magazine. Patronoe is an East New religion concerned with the role of the correct mindset in the mankind destiny. According to his founder, Masaharu Taniguchi, our mindset is the driver of the individual's life. Such a view is like other new religions and spirituality in affinity to the contemporary ethos of uh, self-empowerment and other ideological frame which consider that life choice are not attached to social reality. The sociologist Peter Clark argues that Seicho Noye is a true self-religion focused on daily life. However, since 2000, the leader of Seicho Noye, the contemporary leader of Seicho Noye, Masanobu Taniguchi, has embraced deep ecology. According to him, God, nature, and mankind are the same, and this comprehension is the key to solve environmental crises. When human beings realize that animals, rivers, mountains, and forests are as divine as they are, a new era will begin. Masanobu Taniguchi doctrines on ecology and religion become a relevant theme in Seichinoe publications and religious service, what includes special sutras to nature and even vegetarianism recommendations. During the COVID-19 pandemic in Brazil, Seichinoe argued that pandemic and similar disasters are consequence of our spiritual detachment from nature. To avoid future calamities, humanity must consider itself and nature holistically as one divine reality. In other words, the destiny of human is associated with our collective mindset. Well, my sociological approach and conclusion. I assume that religions are cultural and social phenomena. Considering this view, I refer to religions as a symbolic framework that sets life, meaning, and values that guide people to tackle their anxieties. Religions are bound to social reality. They are not in a vacuum as backward states. Then, I understand that religious response to environmental issues set a guideline for our particular social context and dilemmas of late modernity. Religious response to the environmental crisis caught the attention of religious studies in everywhere. Researchers from different places have pursued the specificities of environment response in different traditions such as Christianity, Islamism, Judaism, Buddhism, Candomblé, and new religious movements such as New Age, New Paganism, and all kinds of spiritual novelty. In Brazil, this kind of research highlights the affinity between religious imagination and environmentalism imagination. The anthropologist Carlos Alberto Steil and Isabel Cristina Moura Carvalho, both Brazilians, discussed that what they are calling the constitution of an ecological subjectivity. This subjectivity has different sources, and religion is one of them. It is relevant to notice that each religious response has theological, cosmological, institutional, and local particularities. In summary, environmental issues are global, but religious response are specific in a way. Catholicism response and sectional response are different due to its particularities. The first is more tied to the social dilemma, and the second is tied to contemporary demands of individuals in late modernity. However, both cope with ecological issues and its anxiety in Brazil. In daily life, some religions change and start to mobilize in different ways, such as cultivating new forms of self identity, well being therapies, and environmental engagement. In this regard, the different kinds of spiritualization of nature have expressed the social relevance of faith not only in private life anymore. Some religious groups in Brazil have also found new ways to be relevant in public sphere through environmentalism. Well, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor João. Now, I would like to invite Professor Thomas Fischer. Welcome, Professor Thomas, to make his presentation titled True Commissions in Latin America and Colombian Crisis. Professor Thomas Fischer is a PhD from Universität Bern, full professor in Latin American history at Katholische Universität Este, Ingolstadt in Germany, and director of the Zentralinstitut für Latino-Amerikanistas, TILAS, at the Katholische Universität Eichstätt-Ingolstadt in Germany, where I have the pleasure to study during my PhD and under the advice of Professor Thomas Fischer. I would like to highlight that this institution that Professor Thomas Fischer is director, the TILAS, is the only one in the state of Bavaria and one of the most important of Germany that dedicate exclusively to study and research Latin American topics. So thank you very much, Professor Thomas, for your presence here, for your presentation, and feel free to begin.
Thank you very much, Robson. It's a nice opportunity to meet you again, but only in a virtual manner at the moment. I'm happy to be invited by this distinguished Washington panel on democracy and nation building in the LACC countries, organized by the Council for Research in Values and Philosophy. In particular, the organizers Yves Bernardo Roger Solis Nicolet and Robson Gomez Filho. So, as to the subtitle of this panel, which means between despair and hope, I hope more hope than despair, I can say that it gets to the real problem we have to deal with. There is no general tendency when it comes to the truth commissions, which is my topic I'm dealing today, but we can say, and I really would like to underscore that it is an instrument in the toolbox of transitional justice mechanics. You know, just transitional justice has become a kind of mechanic to deal with difficult countries, with countries in crisis, as you say, and I would like to understand countries hopefully in transition. No, but it's only one tool, I said, but it's an important one. I really would stress this point, because it has not always been the same opinion in expert debates. Well, whether these commissions work well or don't work well depends strongly on how the circumstances are, where they are established, because we have to take in account that in difficult countries in transition, normally the perpetrators or the dictators or the elites that have supported violent actors are still present, no? And this is the circumstance where they have to handle, where they have to take action. And so somehow their scope is limited, no? We have to take in account this. At the moment, and it also depends on the willingness of the important elites in those countries, no? Whether they want to change something or no. But one point is, whether one wants or not, is the presence of the past. As Elizabeth Judd underscores, the past is always present and it's always used, no? She talks about the use of the past, and it is also constructed, no? So when we try to deal with the past through truth commissions, we have to be aware of this point, and it's something dynamic, no? And we can try to to deal with the past, or we can try to deal with the past, and then it matters how we deal with the past. That's the most important point. And in this, we have to acknowledge that the mass media play an important role, because there's always discourses and also emotions when it comes to put on the table what has happened in the past. And so this dealing with the past has also a discursive dimension. That's what I wanted to stress. No? And the criteria how we do that is human rights. No? What has happened with human rights during dictatorships or during civil wars, and how can we take action when it comes to deal with them. And in this, I would say it is a process, no? And it's a process much longer than what adepts of this transitional concept used to think, that it was a process of 3 years or something. It's maybe the time that truth commissions work as one part, was one component of this process. But to make, as we say, according to Galtung, a sustainable peace, or to build a sustainable peace, it's a question of generation, no? So the scope of truth commission in this context is limited, but it can foster discussion, which is very important, and it can broaden the space, what you can say and what you can think about the past. That's the important thing. And that's why I would like to pick out a sentence of former President Woodrow Wilson when it came to finish the First World War and establish the League of Nations. He said, it should be a living thing, no? And I really see a truth commission not as only an institution or a kind of administration, but a dynamic process. And we have to approach it when we analyze it as something dynamic, no? Moreover, so what are the crucial points of a Truth Commission? And we have to say, when this started to establish Truth Commissions, as in Argentina in 1983, there was no theory about Truth Commissions. So it was established through practice, no? People who took decisions, and then this practice established something of an institutional component of a transitional process. So one component is that it is a temporal body, which is established normally between 1 and 3 years. The commissioners have time to work about the past, not more. And they also have a certain autonomy, a political autonomy. Also, they are legitimated by elected governments, normally by elected governments, who choose the members of this body. But still, they try to work and to elaborate their work independently from political tendencies, which is not easy, of course. And it is not only not easy because of mass media discourses, but also of the guys who have them installed, and other ways of trying to pressure them. No? But they have a juridical framework. They are normally it's a decree or something like that who lays the ground to establish them. No, so it should not be an arbitrary decision who becomes a member of a commission or not a member of the commission. Normally, these are between 3 and 15 people, the commissioners, and they represent different sectors of civil society. Moreover, they are experts in some fields of investigation under research. That's the criteria to select them. And if you look at the professions of them, they are attorneys, they are members of academy like political science, or sometimes or sociology, or sometimes also anthropology and ethnology. That's very important in peoples with in countries with plural ethnical composition. No? And for me as a historian, very interesting. Normally historians are not included, or very few historians are including. Also, it's our profession to deal with the past. I don't know why this happens, but it's something particular I have observed by researching all this Truth Commission of the past. And they have a mandate. So they have to accomplish some work which is defined before they have been established. No? They have a mandate, and normally it's to work out a final report through their proper research about the most important violations of human rights. That's normally what they should have to do. And in the recent past, it's always the case that they should also hand over a kind of recommendation, political recommendation for future, because this final report, because these Truth Commissions also bear the name that they should be support the process of reconciliation of the nations. No, and now today this is a topic to deal with nations in transition and so on. So they make this kind of recommendations, and very important, and this is a particular point I'm working on, is they work according to a methodology. So the members of this commission, they have to come to term, and when it comes to work about what they are working about, the topics, and how they are working about, but also the scope of their work. No, it's absolutely crucial and not that easy. No, and that's a point I would like to pick out. In literature, you find the opinion that truth commissions are always more or less the same, that there has been a kind of standardization of the tools they use and the methodology and so on. I would say no. They really have to come close to the local contexts where they work in. And when you look at the methodologies and how they work, then you find big differences. I find that's quite interesting. This is also due to the knowledge spaces they are moving in, and the communications they have between them, each other, and also against the public, not only the national public, but also the international public. No? The next point I would like to underscore, and it's also very important, is that they not only go to the victims of political violence, but also they try to listen to them. Absolutely crucial. And then it's important how they listen to them and how they try to make narratives about the testimonies they have collected. No? And they do that by, I told about methods, by organizing them, by classifying them, but also by documenting them, and finally by trying to get a kind of abstract, a collective conclusion of their findings. In the Colombian case, I'm residing at the moment in Colombia. We have more than 15,000 testimonies collected now. So this is an important and very telling base of knitting together a kind of final narrative. No? But they listen also to perpetrators if they are willing to say what they have to say about what had happened, and social movements. They try to incorporate them as agents in the construction of this final narrative, which is the final form. No? And then the next point would be that they not only are talking to testimonies and their organization on a local level, but also to the public. This is basically not so much during their work, because they try to work really in a way where there is not that much interference, but at the end, when they work out this final inform, they have to communicate it. First, they hand it over to the government, which is the first addressor of the final inform, but then they have different events where they talk about their findings to the public. Very important. So they try people to pay attention what they have found out. No? But they don't have any juridical nor punishment power. These are different bodies who have to handle with the findings, and normally the documentation they have collected and organized should not be used by in processes, no, juridical processes. So they have a double duty. First, they have to restore the rights or the moral rights of victims, and they have to should help them to understand themselves the past and give their truth some legitimacy in public space. And secondly, they should try to influence the public consciousness about the past, no? And with this, try to strengthen democratic values of the society, which is a huge task, but I think at least what I can say about the Colombian Truth Commissions, they really had done a huge work in this, no? So the final inform is important. It is also important because in a long-term view, it not always does, but it can become a point of reference in building collective memory and in trying to convert the truth of democracy, totalitarian or authoritarian systems or civil war systems, no? To convert this kind of truth and broaden the space of thinking within this new context, hopefully new context. But as they only work 3 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 2 years, maybe 1 year, so a limited time, and as members of truth commissions might have different opinions within the commissions, their relato, their narrative, their final report, so the story they are telling in this final inform is hybrid. Tools, for instance, as manuals, and even how to deal with the past in the schools to sensibilize future generations. So finally, I would just like to show how the way we have gone with these truth commissions through the Colombian Truth Commissions, and show what is different, what is new, what is innovative in the Colombian Truth Commission. First of all, I can't see that much international and transnational influence, maybe a transfer of knowledge. But Colombia as a country has its own experts, and there are many, many of them, and very well professionalized experts we have in these countries. And the next point is that we have them, so they did their own work. I think that's what I would like to stress. It was not that much influenced by international, maybe international discussion, but not so much by international organization like the ONU and so on. And the next point I would like to stress when it comes to the Colombian Truth Commission is that they had a very special focus on women. Absolutely important. The whole commission worked according to the gender issue. And before, for a long time, it was not that usual to see violence under these perspectives. And now we have to state, okay, it's so important. Why didn't we see that before? Why the violent theologians in these countries didn't see that before? But you can do the same in all the other countries of the world, I guess. No? So this is very important. Moreover, they included the points about difference, and I mean LGBTQ movements and what had happened to them. So this is somehow innovative and new too. And then they included and let them participate in indigenous and Afro-American people as well. And finally, they had a generation focus. So they also worked about young people and what happened to them and the role they played in all this. And my final point would be, and this is, you will understand that because we have entered in a different epoch, so the digital epoch, and so they also thought about how to use social media, no, and internet world. So that's all what I have to tell you, and I'm really curious about your questions and maybe comments and critical questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Thomas Fischer. I will take the sequence of our presentations, and so I invite Professor Elizabeth Veronica Judd. You can correct me, Professor, the pronunciation.
Judd.
Montezuma, Judd, thank you. Montezuma, whose title of presentation is From Above and Beyond, the Becoming of the Flock, a COVID Lesson. Professor Elizabeth Judd is professor in quantitative analysis, introduction to economics, youth ministry, and popular religiosity in the master's degree in urban ministry at the Universidade Católica Lumen Gentium in Mexico. She is participant of the board of directors of the Center for Ecumenical Studies, has been invited to share experience in the areas of education, family, training in values, contemporary problems, and gender perspective in instances such as the human rights of Guanajuato, among others. Since 2002, she has participated in the CEILA, Commission for Studies on the History of Christianity in Latin America and the Caribbean, where since 2006, she is coordinator of the Mexico area and member of Latin American Steering Committee. So, Professor Judd, thank you very much for your presence here, for accepting our invitation, and feel free to begin.
Thank you very much. I would like to share the experiences commented in the urban pastoral spaces of the Catholic University, the Lumen Gentium, which also holds the seminary, or used to hold the seminary for the Archdiocese of Mexico. And this experience that I would like to share is by a group of priests who belong to the Archdiocese of Mexico, which is undergoing very important organizational changes. I appreciate this space given by the generosity of Dr. Yves Solis to discuss the hopes and despairs faced by the hierarchy, to lessen the verticality, if not to democratize such a historically relevant institution in Mexico. Thank you for sharing, Yves. So, from above and beyond to becoming one of the flock, a COVID lesson. When I read the title of the round table, I was reminded of the phrase by Charles Dickens with which he starts A Tale of Two Cities, in which he says, these were the best of times, these were the worst of times. And I believe this has been the story of everybody present in these times. But also he ends this phrase, if we can show it, please, Eve, the next one. It was a spring of hope and it was a winter of despair. And so following this, the next one, what we have is for the church to become a true community of communities, that is for the church to truly belong in the 21st century to the society it serves, it must understand that the community is a human phenomenon. And this is a paraphrase of Andrea Puentes, a Colombian theologian. And the idea is that in the last few years, the Archdiocese of Mexico has been undergoing very important changes in order to recreate synodality, or a new way to interpret what Pope Francis has asked for. The next one, please. And so the church historically has been a model of hierarchical authority, as we all know, and it has had very serious problems trying to evolve from it. But since the Vatican Council, it has meant to change. And the democratic ideal has filtered, not necessarily to everybody, and definitely with serious exceptions, it has not filtered into the high hierarchy. Nevertheless, we have, and liberation theology has taught us, we have found interesting exceptions. 21st century, and these exceptions, priests and bishops that have given their lives for their people are not necessarily dead, but are definitely aging. And the 21st century has again brought different structures, and many of them have survived. So we go into the 21st century and we go into a worldwide pandemic with structures that have persisted for centuries and supported the traditional ways of evangelization, but these are clearly overwhelmed. This difference between the high hierarchy, the low hierarchy, and the rest of the believers are have not been able to be lessened, and the traditional ways of representation are insufficient to respond to our reality, especially since the pandemic. So what do we have? We have Pope Francis taking up the council dynamic and emphasizing the urgency of an ecclesial reform, a pastoral renewal that could bring the church back to her identity. And the most important phrase, and all the talk in the Catholic Church, not necessarily the practice in the Catholic Church, has been a church that is poor for the poor. That is a church that quits its political and economic desires of empowerment to go into the message of the gospel in its more authentic history. But honestly, is it even possible to think about this with all the prevailing challenges? And basically, I would like to go two parts. The challenges, which a baker's dozen, 13 challenges that are presented, not definitely by me, but the challenges that are being faced by the clergy specifically the one that is found in the urban pastoral movement, which has been backed by Pope Francis. But all and these challenges would be like the despairs. And then I would like to finish with an example, or well, to finish this first part with an example of how hope has gone into the roots of many of our priests and our local hierarchy. So basically, what are the challenges that we find now in Mexico? And of course, we find them all over the world, but we're talking from this point of view. First, as we said, the de-Christianization of the population based on data from the 2020 census. We are traditionally a Catholic country, still considered the most Catholic country in Latin America, but down from a 98% population accepting Catholicism to a 77.7 in 2020. This, if less than it is in Brazil, Argentina, and other countries, it is still quite an important decrease that most of the faithful find it like a personal affront. Although most of the people who do believe in this who are Catholic or consider themselves Catholic are not practicing Catholics, and they have a historical problem with hierarchy. Obviously, this has created or has maintained the perception of mediocrity at all ecclesial levels, answering to a mentality that pursues personal interests and not fidelity to the gospel. So this idea, and it is viewed from both sides. On one side, mediocrity is considered by the faithful that their priests and their bishops are not doing what is necessary, but on the other hand, it is considered from the believers as our way in which the church has not answered to the realities that they need, and that is why people are flocking away. Why is all this? Well, for basic reasons, or there are a lot more, but for that are mentioned commonly, is that communities have old parishioners, there are very few young people, and very little renewal of pastoral workers. Our pastoral workers have an average age of over 55. Could we turn back, please? Thank you. We have very little religious formation in our parish communities, a lack, which obviously creates a lack of vocations to the priesthood. Then the education given in the priesthood is not necessarily the one needed to face the challenges of such a globalized and postmodern world. And then definitely a lack of priestly identity, especially between the diocesan priests. Thank you. The next one. What else do we have? We have, and this is what I find interesting, a complaint of most priests, and yet there is a great inability to change this, which is the survival of a pastoral of preservation. Though, as Pope Francis says, we cannot passively and calmly wait in our church buildings, there is little movement from pastoral ministry of mere conservation to a decidedly missionary pastoral ministry. And there is a prevalence of hierarchical vertical organizational chart, which lacks unity and archdiocesan identity. There's an archbishop, he has 8 auxiliary bishops, vicars, deans, and then the parish priests. In the last few years, since 2018, Archbishop and Cardinal Carlos Aguirretes has tried to change this organizational chart by giving greater authority to the parish priests through the intercession, we could call it, of the vicars, and thus needing less the work of the archbishop and the auxiliary bishops. Nevertheless, this lessening of the very vertical structure that there is has created a different perspective from the point of view of the priests. The next one, please, Eve. Basically, this has been viewed as a greater distancing of the bishops and the hierarchies to their fellow priests. And thus, there is an incredible indifference and apathy for carrying out all the necessary pastoral planning for this year and the next 2 or 3 years, which should be ready before the archdiocesan pastoral visit. Nevertheless, from all the work that has been done by the archdiocese to promote communication with all the parish priests, this has not worked well. It has been seen more as a bureaucracy movement than as a real interest in understanding what they're going through. How many of these priests have answered the different interviews and the different methods in which they're trying to get information? Well, we're talking a maximum of 3 out of every 10 priests in the archdiocese. So this goes on one part, and then the archdiocese complains, and I was able to comment this with Eve yesterday. The archdiocese complains that the religious communities are not joining happily part of the archdiocesan project. And they complain that they don't feel part of the reality. On the other hand, the religious communities say, what do we need the archdiocesan authorities for? We have our own communities, we are backed by our communities, and thus we do not really need this, again, hierarchical structure. And last but not least, we have the disarticulation of pastoral projects, because each area, each priest, each different deanership is working with their own resources. So they are disarticulate, and this idea to articulate them back has been very problematic, especially because seminarians and parish priests have been locked into their own realities. And then, of course, the greater concerns of many of our parish priests are more economic rather than pastoral, because they need to survive. And this sounds like, well, they're obviously backed by a wealthy institution, but this is really not so. So this creates, all of these create, the last one, please, well, the one before, the crisis of many priests who are doubtful of the changes in the archdiocesan structure, arguing the chaos caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, which left them abandoned. And this is a word that is repeated continuously by many parish priests, and that is that they do not feel part of the authority of the flock, but that they felt abandoned. And if you consider that many of the faithful felt abandoned during the pandemic, this created like a way in which they were left away from this project of being or considering themselves above and beyond their followers to becoming one of them. And here, just to finish briefly, I would like to give this small example. And it is a very personal example, yet I think it exemplifies how the personal despair has been turned to hope for many of the believers when the priest had to sell tamales. And this particular situation, if we can finish the presentation, please, Eve. Thank you. Basically, when the pandemic began, life was completely disrupted everywhere. No, everything was closed, even churches. No, for the first time, churches since the Christian War of the 1920s and early 30s. And we were educated that churches did not close. It was only because of war that churches would be closed, and we hadn't had war. And specifically nothing to do with religion in, well, close to 90 years. So then when the churches closed down, precisely when people need their priests the most, and the churches are closed, and they're closed for many months, and they're definitely not really opened till a very short time ago, because remember that pandemic in Mexico has lasted, it seems like forever, and the rules have not been very clear. So not only did the families go home, the monks and the priests of religious orders were able to go many times back to their houses, but parish priests with their seminarians got locked in the parish houses, and they got locked in without a plan. You're going to tell me, well, nobody had a plan. Yes, nobody had a plan, but it seemed like in Mexico, at least, schools, universities, a lot of institutions immediately started figuring out how to work things out. The church took longer, much longer. So long that finally the creative priests who were not scared of technology or traditional liturgy started interesting ways to relate with their people through masses, through novenas, through rosary prayings, etc. But the structures, the hierarchical structures, were so ingrained in them that many of them were more worried about the liturgy than about pastoral work. That worked for a few months. But then the serious issue began when they had no more resources to pay the light, no more resources to pay the bills. And this, which you would say, well, that should not be a concern of the parish priest, was definitely a concern because there was no inflow of resources. And as there was no inflow of resources, well, suddenly they were left behind. And that is when they felt abandoned. They said, we do not serve our people, but nobody is giving us the structure. I have repeatedly heard, we would have appreciated a call from our bishop, just a phone call to see if we were okay, but we were left behind. And thus, after a few months of this, they had to turn to their people, but now not as the authorities of their people, but as one of them, to help them work out how they would work things out. And one particular case, the case of a priest who was taught by a few of the ladies who taught catechism, and who of course were not teaching catechism because they didn't know how to do that in online or by Zoom. They taught the priest how to make tamales so that the priest could sell tamales and then pay the bills. And he said, you know, we were always protected by the institution. I went from my parents' home to the seminary to the parish, to my parish. And I always had my needs covered. Said it was the first time in my life that my needs were not covered. He said, and instead of this being the worst of all evils, it was the best of hopes. Because for the first time, I was able to understand the issues that go with my people. And these stories are common amongst our priests who had to work with their people, not above and beyond like they used to be, but inside with their communities and work in a more in a more day-to-day, in a more common structure, which allowed them then to understand what it meant to do pastoral work with the people, to go back to their houses, and to work with them and for them. When they became, if not poor, at least impoverished, they were able to understand their people, and they consider this a great source of hope for themselves. With the church's opening, though, with the structure regaining strength, it explains why they're not that interested in participating in the grand structure. They are more interested in, again, recreating their communities and working for their own communities, for which they have become more humanized. I would say this is the first, a general background of some of the issues that I've been able to talk with Eve, and which are, I believe, an interesting experience of how democracy is seeping into by making the members of the lower clergy closer to their people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Elizabeth Judd. Absolutely wonderful reflections and presentation. So after these three wonderful and provoking presentations, I would like to invite Professor Maximiliano to make some comments and share with us some questions for debate. Professor Maximiliano Lianes is born in Argentina and has his PhD in philosophy from Gregorian University in Rome. Currently, he is member of the Pontifical Foundation of Gravissimum Educationis in Vatican City and hold lectures of philosophy at Gregorian University too. I just would like to say that I had the pleasure to share with Professor Lianes the place of debates and the participation of the last two seminars of REP seminar in Washington, the last one some weeks ago, and therefore I can say that I'm sure that there is no one more prepared to comment so interesting presentations of today. So thank you very much, Max, for accepting the invitation to be here, and feel free to make your comments and your questions.
Okay, thank you, Robson. Thank you so much, everyone. Especially the three presentation was very, very interesting, but see, so difficult for me to react, no, especially immediately, no, after hear everyone, because you know, sad part of me is I am a philosopher. So philosopher in general, we need time to reflect, no, and take a lot of time, maybe days. Maybe my best question appears in 2 months, no, but the reality is the word don't work, no, in this form, no, in general. So I need to adapt myself the better as possible. But no, the first thing is I watch the title, no, of this seminar. We have 3 different paths, no, to react. So it's not easy in this sense. Was a little more easy for me the react to the presentation of Professor Joao, because I had first, no, his paper, so I read his paper very well, so it's more easy make some question for him. For example, he speak about religious green utopia. No, he used this term. He say, no, the spiritualization of our relationship with nature as the source of a new ecological horizon. My first question will be if you is for you this kind of approach is new, is really new, no? This spiritualization of nature is new in history. Is somewhat, or what is the new approach? Because the Greek people and so on, no, they had this approach, no. What is new now? The second point is he say in some moment, no, he take two case, no, Catholic case and the other Japanese religion. In a case of Catholic Church, he says it's very important to regard that environmental Catholicism are deep-rooted in social ground. It is not an idealistic approach disconnecting from the social dilemmas, no? And continue. So my question in this sense could be, doesn't this contradict the idea of religion green utopia? No, because you say that the Catholic Church is very concrete in social, take a social way, no, very concrete. So the idea utopia and concrete maybe could be some contradiction or no. The third, you say that Seijo non ie religion, I don't know if it's correct, is true self-religion focusing in daily life, no? And promote self-empowerment. So my question is how this work and by which way, no? What is the purpose of them? See some final question. You say in your conclusion that in Brazil this kind of research highlight the affinity between religion imaginations and environmentalist imagination. No, in my opinion, these studies I'm like Catholic, no. The study carried out in the framework of Catholic universities offer reason to opt for certain principles of values or ecological value, not only imagination, no, some horizon of imagination. We have a lot of professors and research and university that search to share reason for some option, ecological option. No, it's not only beliefs, it's not only a narrative, imaginary narrative, but reason. That because we have a lot of time problem in this sense when we need to dialogue with, for example, secular position. No, we have reason for that. No, a human reason. In the second, Professor Thomas Fischer, thank you very much for the presentation. For me, it was very, very interesting to reflect in this idea of true commission. No, obviously, I don't have experience no, to study that, but I am Argentinian. No, so for me, it's some honor. No, the Argentinian experience in this sense that you mentioned many times. No. Maybe when I hear you, all was very clear for me, no? How we need to structure these true commissions, no? But the question that appeared for me was, for example, is this is some exceptional use, no? Exceptional use, or could be more or less frequent, no? To take this instrument, no? What are the signs, no? Maybe you can say, no, when we don't respect human rights, no? You mentioned that, but maybe you can say more about it. And the second question is, see if this kind of instrument only can grow in a democratic context, no? It's not only some potential for a democratic context, or maybe in other context is possible, or is a value of democracy only, no? See, these are my question. Maybe later I can think another, no? But my first reaction. Y for la profesoresa Elizabeth Judd, no, for me was very interesting to hear you. Maybe the first question could be how you mentioned some of it in your last comment, but first I was thinking, no, the question of how impact this in democracy. You maybe say that democracy impact in this organization of church, no, in hierarchical church, but the contrary, maybe in negative sense, no. It's a problem for democracy if church, in this sense, this crisis that you mentioned and you studied, impacting democracy in the construction of building of nation and democracy in Mexico or in different countries, but no, another thing that I can say is not my experience I lived in this time of COVID, another experience of church and reaction, no, to COVID, when you mentioned, no, the close, or this idea that you speak about, the question of the priest really think about people, or became close to people when need to sell tamales, or to take resources, not is maybe don't could be some generalization. No, there are cases, bad case is so sad to hear this for me, but there are another option also, no, and maybe there are another people and priests, or yeah, people in the church that live and promote another experience also, no, not it's not universal, no, this behavior. I hope that, but no, I see that also, but it was a little see hard for me to hear you in this note that made me think a lot. I need to process your description, no? But it's hard for me to hear this description, no? It's hard. No, this I can start with this. It's okay, and then I can continue with another reaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Max. I will share the word with each presentator. So I would like to begin with Professor João Paulo to answer, to react to these comments of Professor Max, and then I will pass to Professor Thomas Fischer and Professor Elizabeth. So Professor João Paulo, feel free. You can comment and answer. Feel free to use the word.
Okay, thank you, Professor Maximiliano. Well, not sure if I can answer everything. Not sure if I can remember all the question, but let's go. Well, as far as I'm concerned, this eco-religiosity or eco-spirituality is a very contemporary religion, a very contemporary perspective. And why I think this? This environmental crisis is an issue of our days, of our time, you see. So to me, this perspective, this spiritualization of nature as an answer to crisis is something of our context. You see, of course, in different moments of history, mankind represent nature using religion, you see, in East or traditional people here in Latin America, for example. But it's new because the environmental crisis. Only in our days, this idea of environmental crisis makes sense. Only in our days, we are challenged by these issues. You see, I understand that this religion, these eco-religions or eco-spirituality are answers. They try to respond a contemporary reality. Does it make sense? Well, second, about utopia. Oh, well, when I use utopia, I'm not saying impossible world, you see, but ideal. When I think utopia, I'm thinking a kind of horizon of perspective, you see, different of this, the horizon in this moment of crisis. You see, it's it's ideal world, but not as a illusion or something like that. You see, these religious values means hope to a better world, to a better relationship with religion and nature. You see, so utopia here is not in the sense of impossible future, but as an ideal future. You see, it makes sense now? It's difficult to answer this question.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's only some joke. I can say or I can question if ideal is possible.
Oh yeah, in my personal, it's in my personal perspective. Well, I hope so. You see, I hope so. But this eco spirituality in general, they are talking about future. They are talking about tomorrow. You see, um, and I think that it's I cannot say it's ideal. To them, it's ideal. I guess it's possible. You see, but not like they think. You see, I'm not exactly a very spiritualized person. Uh, well, about Seichonoye. Self-empowerment. Self-empowerment is an idea shared by different new religions and spirituality of our days. You see, such as New Age movement or human potential movement and so on. They believe, they believe that when you change your mindset, you can transform your life. You see, their perspective uh, um, of self-empowerment is a kind of transformation of mindset. There is a Marxist, a writer, I don't remember, Mark Fisher. Mark Fisher, Mark Fisher calls it magical voluntarism. The faith that you can change your life and change the world, only change your mind. And this is why Seichonoye and other new religions are not connected with social dilemmas. It's more individual in their point of view. You see? The question of imagination. When I say imagination, religious imagination or ecological imagination, I mean creativity. You know, the cognitive skill to think the world, think the reality. You see, so this environmental imagination is how people deal with ecological crisis and how they respond ecological crisis. You see, and sometimes religious creativity can connect with this ecological imagination, this environmental this imagination. You see? So when I say imagination, I'm not saying imagination as just how can I say, not a region thing. You see? Well, I guess I finished.
Great,
Thank
Professor João Paulo. Professor Max, do you want to comment
Thank you so
something
much.
else
Thank you.
about these issues, this question before we go ahead?
Mine?
Yeah, if you.
No. Okay, yeah. Only this point of imagination, for example, for me it's important that don't confuse like fantasy. No, it's
Yeah,
fantasy.
yeah.
So it's very close imagination to fantasy, and for that I subline the idea of yeah, we can create some explanation, but with a lot of reason for that. You know, it's not only fantasy. No.
Yeah, when I say imagination, I'm not saying fantasy, but a creativity, a cognitive skill to create answers or possibilities.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Professor João. Professor Thomas, if you want to answer or comment something about the comments of Professor Max, feel free.
Okay, just a very short answer. Thank you very much, Maximilian Janis, for your thought-provoking comment. And your major question was about exceptions. And I would say, yes, when in Latin America, there are not many exceptions. Latin America is a continent of of truth commissions and trying to come to terms with the past through truth commissions. Moreover, I would even state that there's a lot of innovation coming out from Latin America in this field. Why? Because we find in Latin America countries that are well, had some dictatorship or civil war conjunctures, but they're trying to get a transition towards democracies, but they are struggling with it. And that's exactly the circumstances when truth commissions are applied, so that we have not many exceptions. But sometimes it takes time until they are established, like in the case of Brazil. In the case of Brazil, we had one Nunca Mais commission, which was came out from the church, but it was not an official one. The official one came late, and what we can learn from this late commission in the Brazil, circumstances matters. It was established during a conjuncture of, well, Dilma and in power, and then when the final report came out, it was not Dilma anymore. So it was very difficult to let this information circulate and get it to the Brazilian people, because the government did not have any interest in it. It was, moreover, for the government, it was a kind of obstacle. So now we could say, what was it good for then? Maybe we have to wait another government, and then they can start. Like much the same that happened in Colombia during the last 4 years with the implementation of the peace process, because the Duque government didn't have any interest to foster these different approaches to build up or start building up, and yes, in different fields, a more inclusive society. No, but now when the final inform came out, we had a new government, and that's exactly the moment when it has this kind of good conjuncture, and there's a broad reception of this final inform is possible. There's still a debate and a very a discourse which is not very friendly with this kind of information, but it's much better than before. No, and what we can learn from the Guatemaltecan and El Salvadorian examples is that if there is no consensus at all that a truth commission should establish, but moreover it is established because of international pressure, this is very difficult then to organize divulgation of the results of the Truth Commission, and it's until now a very difficult circumstances. Finally, we could mention cases like Venezuela and Honduras, where we are still waiting for a Truth Commission. That there are no conditions at the moment, still no conditions, no, to have it.
Thank you
That's
very
what
much.
I have to say.
Thank you very much, Professor Thomas Fischer. And I pass the word to Professor Elizabeth Judd. Feel free to comment and answer what you think about the comments of Professor Max.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to explain, because I mentioned tamales, like if everybody would know exactly what I was talking about. And it is not. I was asked privately to explain that, no? Tamales are a complete meal in a portable form. In most versions, they're made from a mixture of corn dough and a filling, and they're wrapped in banana or leaves or corn husks, and then they're steamed. Culturally, they're very important in Mexico because they cost less than $1, and they're this complete meal that you can take on to the job. It is very traditional and very filling, and I don't know about very nutritious, but they are definitely very tasty. So it is a very cultural representation of being Mexican. No, first, I just wanted to explain that. If you come to Mexico, please eat tamales. There are in several other Latin American countries, no, but and they're different. So they specify a lot what it means to have an identity, and that's kind of like part of the issue, has to do with identity. No, how would this, as you said, Professor, how would this impact the changes in the structure in the Archdiocese of Mexico? How would it affect in a macro level? Well, I truly don't know, because we're not used to democracy at a macro level. And I think that's like a first point. No, we've had one of the longest dictatorships in history, you know, since the 1930s, all the way to the year 2000, and then we had 12 years where it didn't really look like a lot different. So basically, democracy in the mind of most people means going out to vote, and then gaining the right to criticize if things go wrong. And so, as I said, well, then we went out. And then in 2018, our democratical process definitely won, but it didn't make people happy. And just like the rest of the world, no, we've become, and that is why I can say, are we talking about cases, particular cases? Yes. In Mexico, we're always talking about particular cases. We don't have like this massive answer towards anything. So definitely, I in the urban pastoral spaces, I've been able to talk to particularly monks who have no idea what happened in the rest of the world, and they went into lockdown, and they're still in lockdown. They communicate with the world. Now they don't even have to go out because they communicate through the social media, but they have no idea what's going on in the world. Nevertheless, what we do find are examples of hope of what it means to relate differently. And I think that is what we're expecting. Definitely, as I said, the answer towards the hierarchy of the archdiocese has been very provocative. There is a great amount of, I wouldn't call it despair, but of disappointment of how to solve the issues of the low clergy. And this goes to issues that are related with how they deal with their everyday situations more than how they make decisions. Even the great decision to be less vertical came from the Archbishop. It didn't come from a massive reunion of the clergy in order for everybody to give their opinion. Suddenly it was said, you know, we're going to divide the archdiocese. As a matter of fact, huge portions of Mexico City were thrown on their own. No, that we created new dioceses, and that was not necessarily part of the three realities. No, there were three new dioceses created. No, the one of Iztapalapa, which has enormous and massive popular religious background. Also Xochimilco, which is also a diocese that has massive popular beliefs, and then Azcapotzalco, which was divided in pieces, and according to geopolitical decisions. And nevertheless, in the case of Azcapotzalco, since the Basilica of Guadalupe is inside this area, it was taken away. There was a little black hole that was dedicated to the archdiocese. And so many of the clergy, or a good amount of the clergy, and many of the lay people didn't understand why this decision was made. But since they are the poorest areas in the city, then there was certain disbelief, certain amount of why did this happen? And one of the hypotheses created by the people were, we're so poor, the church doesn't want to take care of us anymore. And that is part of the imaginary that they're talking about. It isn't fantasy. It's what the people are starting to believe, and how their beliefs are going into the way that the church is believed as an institution. Now, the church, the high clergy, has always bonded together with the government, always. There has been a nexus to avoid issues after the 1920-1930 Christian War that was precisely a war between the government and the church. So the idea is no more. This should not happen again. We need to create a way in which we can relate in a peaceful manner. So if the church becomes less vertical and more horizontal, it could be viewed as an answer to the democratic desires of the population that democratically chose its president in 2018. It could be, but it really is more of trying to answer what Pope Francis is asking for in the church, with a way that we don't understand how it is done, because, as I say, Mexico does not have a democratic history, and we do not clearly understand what it means. We basically say, well, it's less hierarchical, it is less vertical, and nevertheless, even the most democratic institutions, as the presidency in Mexico, after 3 years has proven it is definitely not democratic. And the decisions are still made at the top. And so what we're doing in Mexico at different levels is we're creating our own microspaces. And that is why case studies do not represent the majority, but they do represent what is happening. That is the lack of belief in the upper authorities, the ones that are above and beyond, and how now the part of the Catholic Church is trying to work in a more inside approach to the people. That would be like a first close down. Very, very complicated, because really our reality in Mexico is very different from the Brazilian and the Argentinian realities. They always put us together, the three countries. No, Mexico, Brazil, and Argentina have similar situations, and you say we're in the same continent. That's about as much as it comes. I know with Brazil we don't even speak the same language, and with Argentina we don't speak the same language. You speak Argentinian, and we speak Mexican. No, and we have our own imaginary situations, but democracy is a very tricky word in Mexico in all different levels, no, because we understand it as a desire we have, but we're still extraordinarily authoritarian. And every step ahead is also a step behind. You know, these great feminist movements in Mexico have increased enormously in the same amount as the disappearances and feminicides. So we're not really like, my 20-year-old son said, you know, we're not truly believing these concepts. We're hiding our misbeliefs in the closet. And the problem is that the closet, like Mexico City, shakes a lot.
Great, Professor Elizabeth Judd. Wonderful explanation and reflection. I think it's very important to think, especially about this diversity in Latin America. We are the same continent, but very different nations, very different identities, and to recognize this is important to improve our place in the globalization, our place in the world. I think this reflection is very important. So yesterday we have had a very interesting debate on religion and violence in Latin America too. And today we returned to this topic once we had a very interesting presentations about religion, ecology, true commissions, COVID. I think it's very nice to make these reflections. And this kind of thing is make clear that this relationship between religion and social political issues is very important, issues that constituting the identity and challenge in Latin America, both in past and currently, I would say. So I would like to take the opportunity that we have here in our seminar today, two Catholic priests, Father Esteban, Father Michael, and if you want to share some experience about the viewpoint of Catholic Church, or if you want to comment something, I think this time is to share the place to debate, and to share the word to another comments, another questions of our public here. Do you want Father Mike or Father Esteban to comment or to share with us some kind of experience about this topic that we are discussing here?
I don't know whether Father Mike is okay.
Yes, it's Father Michael here. Well, part of it, I am actually walking outside up and down because in my little room that the network is not strong enough. So if you get maybe disturbance of wind through the microphone, just bear with me. I want to appreciate the contributions I've heard so far, that of how Paulo on the environment. And I was particularly happy the way he actually brought the issue up, that religion has something to say. It has a huge contribution to make. And I was glad about the fact that after mentioning, I mean, some of the religions that actually may have something to say on this, that he went back home to two very important papal documents of recent. First, the encyclical Laudato Si, and then the synod on the Amazon. I speak as an African, and I think the firm belief of my people is, number one, the earth is sacred. It has often been misunderstood in certain circles as animism and stuff, but the fact is, until we respect the earth, as mother. And we recognize that we need each other until we go beyond a technocratic, a utilitarian conception of the world, until we recognize as human beings that things have a right to be as they are and never in function of what we can put those things to use for. An exploitative, a consumerist, a commercial notion or ideology about the beautiful planet. I think we just come to a point where we'll all survive or we will all sink. Goldfish have no hiding place anymore. If it affects the North, it affects the South. And so I just want to say again how I truly, truly appreciate the fact that you recognize that in this whole debate about ecology, actually, a transcendental recognition of responsibility that God gave it to us. We are stewards, and that ultimately will be responsible to God for the way in which we use it. That is maybe should be at the heart of any discussion on the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Father Michael. Father Esteban, would you like to say something?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank to all the members of this seminar for the opportunity to share these ideas and experiences, because each of us live in this world, and part of our reflection, I suppose, is to try to understand better what is really happening in different parts of, in particular, Latin America. And that have been for me for a very useful reflection, also for my work in my doctorate. And because my topic, which I am addressing, is about dialogue and the opportunity to create perhaps a method for proactive communication, and try to confront or to make to face the actual reactiveness. Yeah, in my opinion, we are facing in almost every parts of the world this kind of citizenship that becomes more open to new ideas, new religion styles, spiritualities, and research for a new kind of human nature. But at the same time, we are losing the basic part of our capacity to communicate, which is, according to the ancient philosophers and traditional or Catholic philosophical tradition, we as human beings can communicate something, and the capacity to communicate what we are really feeling and suffering, struggling, is part of our discourse everywhere. Nevertheless, I think in some of those areas that we were speaking of today, philosophers in Brazil speaking about new ways of communicate what this longing for some connection between nature and spirituality, perhaps they lack of a true reflection about what is for us today to be able to say something, to be able to communicate with within our spiritual reality, if we believe we have a spiritual soul, and then what is to try a communication between another living being as the rest of the creation. Okay, I don't want to be lost, so my reflections today are about, let me read you something I was typing just a few minutes ago. Yeah. First of all, because I am a Catholic priest, and I don't know whether you are informed. If not, I am telling you at this very moment. Nowadays, in the Catholic Church, we are reflecting about synodality. I don't know whether this is correct. This is the correct pronunciation, but Pope Francis and the bishops for this commission, which is not at all a truth commission. This has nothing to do. But at the same time, it's a kind of effort, a kind of looking for a communitarian looking for what is happening in the different levels of hierarchical structure in the church, from the very above, from the Pope until the last server and faithful in our communities and our Catholic communities. And this synod, which means a way or the point in which two or more ways come together. This is the meaning of synod. This kind of reunion of commission among bishops, priests, lay people has this scope to listen each other and to become more awareness of what is really happening, not only as a theory of what the church has to be from the ancient or from the very beginning of the Catholic Church until now, but what we need to face and what we are really facing in our days. Professor Judd told us that here in Mexico, the major decisions are still taken from the leadership of the main institutions. We say Catholic Church and other religious institutions and the government. And I would like to tell you why this is happening. This is my poor opinion. Here in Mexico, we are not used to listen each other deep and thoroughly. In the same way that we usually are not well prepared to talk about those important issues that really concerns us or that really matters in our society, in our daily lives. This is perhaps sometimes because we lack really of an identity, because to build an individual identity nowadays became very difficult. For we have a lot of voices and discourses, and I guess if any of us have this this research in our minds and maybe in our hearts, but it has it became very difficult in our times to express something. I don't know whether you have listened about this Korean philosopher. He's I forgot the name, but Han, yeah, thank you. And he spoke something about this clearness or transparency. Sorry, I don't know in English what will be the translation. He wrote in German, indeed, and he speaks about this society of nothing has to be hidden. You should show up everything. And this at the same time is making an uniform society who cannot express something pure and from your own, from our ownness. Yeah. And this is perhaps one of the issues that we could address in another chat, or because we should also and always to pay attention on the individual man before speaking long or big about the social issues, or better to say, we should study all together the individual in a particular and local community and its relationships and those interdisciplinary studies that could help to understand what is happening with the rest of the world. Speaking again about Mexico, we are still in that moment in which we need to take a step back, perhaps, and try to order again what has happened. As Professor Fischer told us, this restoration of the past, or trying to bring in the present what has happened in the history of that violence, which we accepted somehow in the past. And the Catholic Church, I hope we are trying today to restore that part of our faithful memory and faithful in the society, that it is important to admit. This is one of the Pope Francis, how do you say, his preference, one of his most preferable ideas. It is beautiful to admit our past wrongs and to face what it is better to create together, to build together. Okay, thank you for your attention, and thank you again for all your proposals and reflections.
Thank you very much, Father Esteban. I would like to take the opportunity to share the word with another participants of our seminar today. Maybe Manuel Cardoso is one of our panelists from yesterday, and research some topics very similar to Professor Thomas Fischer in True Commission of Colombia. If you want to talk about or say something, Manuel, and then Professor Andrew Blasco too, I will share the word with you too. Manuel, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a question for Professor Joao. His presentation makes me think about the cosmopolitan concept of law, and regarding the way that the human right is is a main category of this cosmopolitan law, and it also gives the tools of this law of nation after the Second War to intervene in domestic judicial system to solve problems regarding the human rights violations. My question is, do you think, and this is a question more like appealing to your intuition of a scholar, is like, do you think that we will, as a nation, we will create this international or cosmopolitan law to protect the environment as a tool to gain this utopia of protecting the planet? This is my reflection and my question. We will create a cosmopolitan law that gives the tools to nation to say, okay, Brazil, you are not protecting the jungle as it needs to be protected because it's the lung of the world. Because we have to keep in mind that, for example, local issues as drug trafficking and illegal mining are no local issues anymore, are universal issues that we have to tackle. And then I don't know if it's some kind of speculating, but I would like to hear your thoughts about it. And this is regarding your presentation, and also congratulate the other two presenters. Adding some information about this institution of transitional justice system, is the Truth Commission in Colombia. I highly agree with most of the statement of Professor Fischer, and we work together in some researching some of the topics, because it's a topic with many corners and many lines, like transitional justice. You have history, you have truth, and the role of truth in the judicial system, the role of truth in history and national history, the role of truth and for the victims and human rights organization and society in general. And indeed, this institution has been learning from previous Truth Commission since 1983, as you mentioned, with the Argentinian Truth Commission, and also is a very new topic, and appears others new topics, like, for example, the digital and the communication strategy that they implement, and also visibilizing another type of violence, a part of physical elimination of the enemy. And this is, I consider, one of the most important contribution of this Truth Commission. And let's see how the next Truth Commission, for example, that one that has been created in Mexico so recently, and maybe in the future in Venezuela, or maybe in Spain, that has to address the Franco dictatorship, and will implement some of the tools that this Truth Commission had created in a very, very success way, and some of them, and no very success in others. But it's very interesting example. And this is my comment from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel. As the fathers, Stephen and Michael, had more comments than questions, I would like to hear, before to pass the word back to Professor Thomas and Professor João, I would like to share the word with Professor Andrew Blasco. Then I give the word back to the panelists to answer. Would be? So, Professor Andrew Blasco, feel free.
Okay. I believe it was Father Michael who used the phrase, made the point that the earth is sacred. What I would like to do tonight is to call attention to just how radical this statement is. It does not call into question only the grossest extremes of consumerism, waste for the sake of creating further waste, and waste for the sake of creating more wealth. It actually calls into question industrial production as such, and insofar as modern society is based upon industrial production, it calls into the question the basis of modern society as we know it. industry, by definition, I would say, is not sustainable. It's obvious in the case of heavy industry, for example, or very polluting industries that really are clearly not sustainable, right? But I think this holds to a much greater extent as well. Industrial food production isn't sustainable, right? Industrial energy production isn't sustainable. Energy production isn't sustainable. Someone might say, oh, well, then you can, but you can use reusable sources of energy, such as the solar energy. Well, solar panels are easily recyclable. And solar panels, electrical storage technology is based upon lithium-based technology. Lithium is certainly not, it is not the kind of material that you can, it's not renewable, is what I'm going to say. And so, this is really, I think, really a very strong statement. I don't disagree with the statement at all, but to say that they're into sacred really calls much of what we take to be as modern life. It calls it into question as well as sustainable. And so if you want to press this even further, I don't think this is cynical to say. I'm just simply drawing what seems to be a logical conviction. An ecological awareness coupled with industrial societies is simply delaying the inevitable, right? Because if your way of life is not sustainable, well, it's not going to be.
Excuse me, Andrew. Andrew, your microphone has some problem. We cannot hear clearly.
Okay.
It's a lot of echoes.
Okay. Well, I'll stop there. I think I made my points. If you've understood anything of what I said, I think I've made my points, and so I'll just stop here. If I have to clarify myself later, I'll try a better way of doing it. Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Andrew, if you can, put on the chat your comment, because it was interesting about technology and some solar thing you were telling, but there is a problem with the mic.
Thanks for your technology, I'm afraid. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Andrew. We had some difficulty to hear you, to understand you, but if you can point some parts of your talk in the chat, especially if you had some direct question for the panelists, I would like to ask you to put something in the chat. But thank you for participation. Professor Hu, Dr. Hu, do you want to say something?
Yes, I think some few observations or probably questions to the presenters and all of us. According to the presentations, I have a few ideas. First is about the top-down and the bottom-up approach. And from the concrete examples from Truth Commission and the church authority or structure. And this approach has been, this tension between the top-down and bottom-up approach has been always there. And how to balance these two approaches is an issue to think about. And the other tension is between individual and the community or institution. And this tension is always there when the institution started, either religious, political, or any kind of institutions. And so this institution, the tension or this problem, to solve this problem is complicated and also difficult. Yesterday, Father Esteban said that his focus is on anthropology, how to understand the human beings. Yeah, probably now we more or less understand who we are, and it's from different angles. But how to understand institutions and how to solve the tension between individual and the institution or community is a problem. We create institution, we create community as members, but then the institution becomes so large, so strong, so bureaucratic, so complicated. And it seems institutions dominate individuals. And how to solve this problem, this tension? And the other tension is about history, the past and the present. And someone said, forget the past is a crime, but how to bring the past to the present, to the future. And we create history. Today, as someone said, why we allow in the past, allow criminal crimes to happen. But today, we do the same. We still allow crimes to happen. And we are making history. We made history in the past, and we are making history at the present. And do we learn from the past? And what we cannot forget, and what we can remember, and what the things, forgiveness, the idea of forgiveness, and the collective memories, and this is these are the issues for me. We can think about it, and all of this points to the relationships. What kind of relationship we want to develop, construct in all kind of relationships. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hu. It's very important questions. I will pass the word back to the panelists, but before I just would like to continue this reflection from you about Brazil. Brazil, we had a true commission to, and that was one of the most important points, because our last president Dilma Rousseff was faced by the military, and we had this some days ago. Our last president Michel Temer had a pronunciation, a public pronunciation, that he claimed that the Brazilian people must forgive our past, must forget and forgive our past if we want to have peace in Brazil, facing this so difficult situation, political situation that we face in these elections. And it's the situation in Colombia and the situation that we are debating, discussing here, show us that it's the opposite. It's just the opposite. If we forget our past, if we forgive our past, we cannot have peace in the present. The Commission's rules say that we have to face our past. We have to face our crimes in the past and the present if we want to see a better future. So just to comment, and I would like to pass again back the word to Professor João Paulo, Professor Thomas Fischer, and Professor Elizabeth to comment these all comments, these all questions that we had now. And if we have more time in the end, we can make some questions and some reflections again. Professor João Paulo, please, the word is with you.
Okay. About a cosmopolitan law, international law on ecology and environment. Well, I think that this kind of law is important. You see, it will be important. I think that our future depend on it. However, especially in Brazil, we are facing a very difficult moment due to the nationalism discourse, far-right nationalism discourse. You see, I think that I hope next year will be different. But if this conservative way, keep growing, unfortunately, we will not will not solve our problem, will not solve our situation about environment. Of course, international law also means some change in the world community. You see, the idea of progress, for example, must change. You see, here in Brazil, for example, both right and left wings, progress is the central aspect of political discourse. You see, without change our idea of progress, of development, of material development, I think that this cosmopolitan law will not be a reality. You see, but honestly, I think that it will be possible.
Thanks, Professor João. Professor Thomas Fischer, are you there? I think not. Oh, yeah. Feel free, Professor. Unmute your microphone, please.
Okay, I'm right back, and I listened to the your exposition and comments, and thank you very much all. I will start with adding something to the comment about truth commissions and the importance of truth commissions, and I would just pick up the point that whether or how we are learning from former truth commissions, and I would say yes, we have learned with different experiences, but what is also true that local context matters, and that was the point I really stressed. So each truth commission has to adapt to local conditions, local context, local political circumstances, and so on. This is absolutely important. And local, and this is a new thing, an innovative thing in the Colombian Truth Commission, means also that we have to go away from a national imagination, which is a centralist imagination. And that's what the Colombian Truth Commission made. They talked about the territorial approach, no? And this was even at stake in the peace negotiations in La Havana between 2012 and 2016. So this entered into the peace treaty, and then it became a focus also from the Colombian Truth Commission, doing work on a local level, no? And they divided the country, I think, in 16 regions. No, 6 regions. I don't remember, but they divided the country into regions where they tried to establish special committees, no? And I think that's a good approach. And the other thing, listening to so many expositions from people, okay, Manuel tells us it's 11 macro territorials, no? And the other thing I wanted to stress is, as we are talking here so much about religion and about Catholic Church, I think the Catholic Church has a lot to say about truth and the past and contribute to reconciliation because they have a knowledge in this. Now the but comes, but they have to do also, or be able and be willing to talk about their own role during civil wars and during dictatorships, because normally Catholic Church has been standing on both sides, no, or even on more sides. So it's complicated, but the discussion on that would be required too. That's would be my statement, and that's why I really appreciated the expositions about Catholic Church and what role it can play in this transitional justice processes. Okay, I have to find my. So I really liked the comment of Yeping Hu, especially when you talk about top down and bottom up. That's what we have to find, the balance. And the findings of the Colombian Truth Commission was some on a national level. Sometimes it was contradictory, and sometimes even a little bit puzzling, because one part of the final inform would maybe not be consistent with another part. No, so each part had its. Sometimes each part had its, and it's more than 2,000 pages. So that's quite big. No, it can't be absolutely consistent. But they try to include this bottom-up approach. They try also to work with communities on a local level. That was your second point. Now, individual and communities. They try to work with communities, and then they really face the problems of different groups within a local community. But that's the work we have to do, and to start. And that's why I talked about a long and a dynamic process. No, it's not a thing that you can close after 3 years. Never. It's impossible. And yes, tensions are at work, of course, and they are always at work. But we have to find. It's no way to try to evade them, as Robson mentioned with a quoting Tamer, to forget by not mentioning it. And that's because then you have the individuals kept alone with their traumas, no? And that's never a solution, I would say. So, and what about history? I really agree as well. There is a dispute in many countries about history, and I try to explain that still in Argentina this goes on, and I would say much the same in Chile. The last referendum was just a proof of it. It's still a kind of divided society which is struggling over the past, which is the historical past. No. So that would be my comments, final comments.
Thank you very much, Professor Thomas Fischer. And Professor Elizabeth, please, the word is with you.
I would like to thank all of you for all this overview that we've been having in these last, I thought it was going to be like long, but it's been like very few minutes. No, there's so much to say. And I totally agree with what you've mentioned about the idea that we have so many voices. Father Esteban Eli was saying, no, I mean, there's so many voices, so many discourses, so many different points of view, so many views of truth, and many of them considering themselves the truth. No, I think that that's kind of like the problem that we've been having. So from one story, we believe that is the ultimate truth. And as Dr. Hu Yeping has said, that is definitely something we have to be very conscious of, that when we're talking about different cases, we need to understand that these cases do represent part of reality, but not all of it, no? And but this is happening in all our institutions, no? All our institutions have broken down, and all the authorities that they held for many, many years or even centuries have broken down and now do not represent everybody and anybody. Yet, I believe in the case of religion, in the case of the Catholic Church, it still has a cohesive voice that could say something. As you say, we have to look inward to be able to understand the reality that is being faced, but I still believe it could work as a voice of certain authority in the matters that are important, as long as it is coherent with its own discourse. No, in this approach between the tension of the individual and the institution, I think that the only way to represent the institution is by the coherence between what is said and what is done. And that is why it is so important that the communication can flow, and that the meanings that we're talking about democracy, or talking about the synod, it is very, very essential that we put a ground base of communication. I think these elements of the ground base, the floor with the minimum elements that we have to communicate are essential. And I believe that these spaces are a possibility to start approaching this in a more orderly, perhaps a more peaceful, and definitely a way in which we could all listen to each other and from there learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor Elizabeth. I think we have some time more. Dr. Hu, what do you say? Well, we could we have to finish, or we have some time to debate anything more?
I think Andrew has a question to Michael about the sacredness of the earth. I'm not sure.
Andrew has put some. So if you allow me, Professor Andrew, I would like to read this question for the presentations. I apologize to all for the audio difficulties. Okay, I wanted to address the radical nature of our stewardship of the earth. The earth is sacred, and they speak of the broader implication that has for our modern way of life, which call into question its very foundations. So I would like to add something to this question, and thank you for the question, Professor Andrew. I would like to talk or to just reflect about the importance of this relationship between ecology and religion in a moment that the religious discourse or speech around all the world has been harassed by extreme right or far right thought that not rarely denied these ecology issues, especially maybe to Professor Elizabeth. How do you see the impact of this or not this event of COVID, this pandemic of COVID, to this kind of religious preoccupation or religious issues with environment? And maybe to Professor João Paulo too, what the importance of liberation theology to the new Catholic approach of ecology? I would like to ask something about, since the Catholic thinkers on ecology, at least in Brazil, are connected with liberation theology, like Leonardo Boff and other thinkers, or even the Pope Francis, that is not directly connected with the liberation theology, but is appointed as a progressist Pope. He has manifested this kind of preoccupation about the environment. Or more than this, we could think about the liberation theologies that it focuses more problems of this world, different of the traditional Catholicism and Christianism in general, that had more hope or of happiness in another world and something like that. How the question could be, how could this approach contribute to the association between theology, liberation theology, materials issues in Catholic thought, and this kind of ecology? I would add. how is the future of theology of liberation, or liberation theology, with the speech of this discourse of ecology inside this preoccupation of these authors. So I would like to ask, is there something else that would like to ask, something that our final moment of discussion, maybe Max or some Eve? Please, Eve, you have a question.
I would like to, sorry, go.
Oh, thank you, Max. You are so kind. So I just want maybe to have final comments, because I think also we have a lot of questions, no, regarding how to resist, how to fight, what is the way to stop deforestation, mining, to change our way of living. And also one question that I have, and maybe Elizabeth, but also Manuel and Professor Thomas could help, is the condition of possibility. Dr. Fischer told us that there is no way of doing truth committees in everywhere in Latin America. So what do we need? Is it an institutional problem? Is it a social problem? Why isn't possible to have everywhere the possibility to face our history? And yesterday, Manuel shared with us that one of the main problems is that sometimes the victims are not represented in the truth commissions. So what do we need as Latin American to change and to transform? Are we part of the problem? Is it like so many persons say, a personal transformation that is needed? How can we transform society when we see that some governments, like our government in Mexico, has 60% of people who say they are doing a great job, but at the same time, most of the middle class are uncomfortable with the government. What is happening with Brazil, where it's kind of a split society? So maybe as final comments, each one of you can tell us what are the conditions of possibility that are needed to transform Latin America. It's not an easy question, and it's not to be resolved in 1 minute, no, but just thinking of what you shared today, and thank you so much for all you share with us.
Sorry, I had a little problem with my microphone here. Thank you, Professor Evie. I think Professor Max, you had asked the word, please.
Yeah, but it's related with that Yves say, but it's related with the title of today, no? Democracy and nation building, Latin America, etc., but not directly with the three presentations. No, it's only one comment, 1 minute, but because I read the text that you share with us, no, for reflect for this seminar of this article, challenge for Latin America in the 21st century, from Miguel Ángel Centeno and Andrés Larios, no. And they say, what are the grand challenges of the 20th century for Latin America? The author speak of environment pollution as one of the main problems of our time, no? Like João, for example, speak about it. But for me, I concentrate in this expression that they say this question, no? They wonder who rules in a globalized world, no? That is some idea that I want to share with you, because he has this, no? Who rules in a globalized world? And my answer, that little explain poverty in Latin America, no, weak democracy and so on, is that an obvious answer is not Latin America. No? In a global process, Latin America don't govern, no, they don't have the big power, no. Maybe it's a little revolutionary, my idea, but I believe in that. No, for example, the Industrial Revolution was not a Latin American invention. No? We lived this Industrial Revolution in the past, no? But it wasn't our invention, no? The Digital Revolution is not a Latin American invention. Capitalism and then savage neo-capitalism is not some Latin American invention. The relocalization of companies to place where workers can be exploited more is not a Latin American. Never grow in Latin America like first idea. No, it's not an invent of Latin America. The McDonald's models, the Amazon model of work. No, now this model of work around the world. No, Amazon model. Companies that prohibit the organization of workers in unions. No? That is very frequent, for example, in US. No? Monsanto. They are not Latin American invention. Rather, it is something that Latin America suffers and need to work with this. But it's something that appears, and you need to react. No? And she must face it from a place of disadvantage a lot of time, or less power than bigger power that promote this kind of new phenomenon around the world. No? That is some reflection or some provocation for my questions are, what do you think about it? No, it's a little far of reality. Is something that we need to put inside our tablet of reflection about democracy and poverty in Latin America or evolution in Latin America, or not. We always need to think about what we do, no, why Latin America can do better. No, it's only our fault, or we are in a global process that a lot of time is a big challenge. No, it's a big challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Max. So I will like to back the word to the presenters to finish these questions, these issues, and I will start with Professor João Paulo. Professor João Paulo, if you want to comment.
Well, first, thank you for the question. I cannot say our problem is our fault here in Latin America. See, I guess there are international order, you see, and sometimes this international order is not inclusive, especially because capitalism. Of course, we have a lot of challenges that we must face by ourselves, especially when we consider issues like environment and social problems and democracy, you see. But it's both international order and also problems here, not one or other, you see. And I think that religion can be an interesting source to deal with it. I think that religion can offer, can respond to some of these challenges, or at least some religions, of course, can respond to these challenges, especially those religions concerned with the workers, the poor, women, and so on. You see, this kind of religiosity seems to be much more, how can I say, much more relevant to deal with this question. You see? That's all. That's my question, my answer.
Thank you very much, Professor João. Professor Thomas Fischer, if you want to comment.
Okay, I think I was addressed by the question of Bernardo, which I find very important to answer. And well, there's maybe not a satisfying answer, but I would like to stress the point that not all societies in Latin America are not able or not willing to face history. So we have to see country by country, and then we may remark differences. For instance, Chile right now goes forward, or I would say even Argentina, by all its difficulties they face at the moment, but they had made important steps forward. And they had also advances when it comes to know and let know people about what had happened in the past, no? And right now in Colombia, I'm also, let me say, cautiously optimistic, no? What at least could happen. So there are, like political scientists say, there are windows of opportunities. And then when these windows of opportunities occur, then we should pick up the moment and really try to go forward and do our work. And in some countries this has happened, in others, what has been mentioned, Brazil, or what has been mentioned to Mexico, it is maybe a little bit more difficult, but the moment might come too. I hope so far. This is an expression of societies which are struggling, and they are in struggles, and these struggles are ethnical and social struggles. Too many people in Latin American states are excluded or half excluded. Latin America is the country of most unequalness of all over the world. This is truth. So if this doesn't happen, nothing will happen. No, the struggle will go on. And this is, in my point of view, not only a question of institutions, the institutions are just an expression of that, but a question of how elites manage countries. There's too much exclusion, there's too much corruption, and they do that like it were nothing, no? If they're not punished, then they go on. So my point would be, what should really change is political will. And that would be my question for you all. You're all specialists. How can we change that? To really make a consensus within elites that they have to change this kind of situation. Inclusion is possible, but they should do that, no?
Thank you very much, Professor Thomas. And Professor Elizabeth, your comments and words, please.
Well, just kind of like repeating the obvious, no, we're in a global process with an inability to change global reality. We don't even understand global reality, no, but we can think about it. And I think we've got to think about it from different places, and we can think about it from different positions and offer diverse solutions, which are partial and definitely dangerous, but which open possibilities, which should be registered and heard so that they can be studied, not only to copy them, but to amplify our version of reality, no? And I was able to observe the process in the municipality of Ayutla de los Libres in Guerrero, where they have decided to forego the political parties and to self-govern themselves. And it's a most interesting example. There are 4 examples of 4 municipalities in Mexico doing that. And the case of Ayutla de los Libres is very interesting because it was very democratic and its results were very sad. Most of the people who were chosen to govern the municipality of Ayutla de los Libres were murdered by the organized crime. And so it could give us the idea like, well, it doesn't work. Let's keep on with the same ways that we had, no? But I believe if we understand these processes, these individual processes, not to gain a global answer, but to give us hints that go from bottom up, they can give us a different perspective. And our institutions are working in that. Perhaps not the church, and I don't think we can talk about the church with a capital T, with say, and with a capital C, like saying there's one and only and they all think alike. No, but there are some elements of the progressive church which have faced organized crime, especially in the case of Mexico, which have developed new ways of raising crops, a new not so ample, not so varied, not so profound as in Brazil, but in Mexico we're doing little work in case of nature. No, when you mentioned how did the pandemic affect nature? Well, it surprised. And then we were able to divide and conquer again. No, I think pollution has not gotten better. I mean, it prevails enormously, but it gave us a time to think about things in a different way. And I think if we open up spaces in which even small groups can share their experiences and share the ways that it could be done, well, then I think we've got a little bit of hope. Those 2 words, no, that you mentioned for this table, no, it was hope and despair. Well, it is very easy to fall into the global despair. I think we've got to build local elements of hope, and that we can learn from what is being done in other places. Try to search for the common ground that we have in Latin American countries and see what we can learn from them in general. We talk about truth commissions, and I think we're very far away in Mexico from truth commissions because we don't want to really hear the truth. But at the same time, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of people looking for the more than 100,000 people who have disappeared. And they're creating their own local commissions, and they are becoming louder in their desire to ask the government to do something, whatever, as long as it is closer to what is expected of them. No, so if the government doesn't respond, or the national government doesn't respond, well, then we're pushing the local governments, and if they don't respond, we're pushing the local business people, and if they don't respond, we're just pushing around, seeing if there's a way in which, through these local histories, through these local examples, we can start the process of rebuilding hope in what seems to be a hopeless situation. But of course, we also know if we become hopeless, then we become stagnant. We don't move, and we might as well just die. And I think that historians, as well as all social scientists, just don't want to believe this. We don't want to just sit down and back and die. No, we want to face things from different perspectives. We want to see how much we can understand of the global world and how much we could work in the local situations by creating situations of hope. And you have mentioned some of them in this space, and I think we could all learn from them. No.
Thank you very much, Professor Elizabeth. I think we have got the roof of our time. So I would like to thank very much each presenter of today, Professor João Paulo, Professor Thomas Fischer, Professor Elizabeth. Professor Thomas Fischer is not with us at this moment because he has a compromise. And I want to thank you to the REP seminar, the Council of Research in Values and Philosophy, especially in person of Dr. Hu, that permitted and idealized this seminar. I would like to highlight the importance of this kind of initiative, this kind of opportunity to debate our Latin America continent, to debate our challenge, to debate our perspectives, to construct not only a more fair globalization of intellectual point of view, but above all, to understand different point of views, different discourse, different challenge of our world, of our continent, of our perspectives in general. So thank you very much for you all. I think we had a wonderful days yesterday and today, and it's wonderful to have this opportunity to share with you this space. Dr. Hu, do you want to
say thank you everyone for your sharing, for your ideas and experience, and we hope to continue our discussions in the future, and any ideas and suggestions, just let us know. We'll continue our discourse. Again, many thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hu. Evie, do you want to you or Max to say something else?
No, just say thank you, and thank you, Dr. Hu, for organizing that, and thanks to all the people who have gathered, Esteban, Andrew, I'm not sure if it's Denis, Olga, or I don't know, with our Russian friend also. So thank you so much, and thanks to the panelists. Yesterday panelists, today's panelists. It's been a wonderful time, and thanks to the CRVP, and I think it's part of Father McClean legacy to discuss. So thank you, Dr. Hu. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. We need to continue. We need to continue.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, and Dr. Hu, I miss you.
Great. See you next time. Okay. Bye. And then take care.
Thank you very much again.